Welcome everyone to 52 Living Ideas. I am not Shrikant, obviously, so I am just sitting in for him. He is hosting a couple of guests from out of town, and tonight is Self-Improvement Fridays, and tonight we'll be covering sacrifice and delayed gratification. And Shelley, take it away.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'll read basically what the description was that we put in the meet out, and it just says that tonight we'll discuss how sacrifice and delayed gratification are the building blocks to achieving your aims and goals. I'll share several stories, including my son's journey from going from an average runner to becoming a collegiate D1 athlete. But I'm also going to share a story from another son. His name is Price. And I'm going to tell of another story, an evolving one that has been going on over the last couple weeks in my own life. So one of the things that I wanted to do really quickly is, for those of you who don't come here regularly, I don't know if we have any newbies or not, but typically what I do is I lead these every other Friday, and I just tell stories from my own life, and I incorporate my family a lot of times. And tonight, because I'm going to be talking about my family, I thought I would share a picture of my boys. So I have 5 boys, and I thought y'all might just like to see that, especially for those of you who are here regularly and you hear my stories all the time, and I talk about my family all the time. And so these are my 5 boys. This is a picture from May, will be 3 years ago. My mom threw me this a really lovely birthday party where all of my family was there and my very closest friends. It was probably one of the best days of my life, and she hired a photographer to take pictures of me and my boys. And so the long-haired fella, now that's Price. I'm going to be talking about him tonight. And before he got his hair cut and entered the military, I would always call him Fabio because of that long hair. And then Bo is the little one in the middle, but he's not as little anymore. He's taller than me and driving. And then John Isaac in the purple shirt, he's my runner. He runs for the University of Georgia. And then the light blue shirt on one side of me with the curly hair on top, that's my oldest son. His name is Ty. He went to Georgia Tech, graduated summa cum laude with an electrical engineering degree, and is now pursuing acting and is a playwright, lives in Atlanta. And then Brady, the handsome fellow on the other side of me, was in the Navy as well. He was a corpsman. He's out now, and he's in nursing school here in Augusta, which has been a real treat for me having him around. So anyway, I'll be talking about Price, the long-haired fella right here. You can see he's got a little bit of braces, and then this curly-haired fella in the purple shirt, and his name is John Isaac. So thanks for allowing me to share that and brag on my boys a little bit. They are my pride and joy for sure. Okay, so for those of you who maybe haven't been following along on Fridays when I'm talking, I've shared a lot about my own personal story in which due to my ex-husband leaving my home violently, I became a single mother to 5 boys. I had no resources, no financial resources. I didn't have a career, didn't have a house, didn't have a savings, didn't have a 401k, didn't have anything. And I had to really figure out how I was going to reinvent myself and get off welfare and take care of myself and my children. And so the event where my ex-husband left the house violently is he had made some poor choices in life, and I had uncovered these. And when I confronted them about him, he ended up pulling out a gun, in which I wrestled away from him in front of my 3 youngest children who were at home because I homeschooled. I was a stay-at-home homeschooling mom. So my 2 oldest children were away. They were in school, but my 3 youngest I still homeschooled. And so they were at the house, and Price was the oldest of the children in the home at the time. And he had just turned 11 about 4 months or so prior to this happening, 3 or 4 months prior. And he really took the brunt of what happened that day with the children. Now it's interesting. John Isaac and I, so it was Price was there. John Isaac was there. There's 2 years difference between the two. And then Bo was there, but Bo was little bitty. And, oddly, and he's had his own struggles recovering from that. We've been in a lot of therapy with him when he was young. He had a lot of anxiety with dealing with abandonment. And we've had to work through stuff for years. He started really coming out of that in about fourth grade. It was really exciting to see. But interestingly, because we were dealing with, or I was working with him to get him emotionally recovered from all that, I'd never asked him, like, "God, what do you remember from that day?" And so I asked him today, for the first time ever, which is wild, but and I said, "Bo, do you remember anything?" And he's so funny. You know what? You can tell what we talk about in our house a lot, because he said, "Mom, I remember looking out the window and seeing Dad, and then I remember the police." And then he said, "But I've just heard John Isaac talk about that, and we don't, a lot of times we make up memories in our heads. So maybe I remember it and maybe I don't." But anyway, so I thought that was interesting that this talk today prompted me discussing that with him. But anyway, so, and I have talked about it with John Isaac, and he does have some memories, but really Price took the brunt of this. And so he was the one that got the children to safety when I was chasing his dad all over the home. He got them in a back bedroom. He locked the door, made sure that they were safe. And once the police came and Joe was hauled off or my ex-husband was hauled off in handcuffs, he was sitting on the couch and he was just an emotional wreck. And it was interesting because all he wanted to do was he just wanted to know, was his dad okay? And his dad had been taken to we were living at the time in a very small town, and he was taken to the emergency room, and he was put in a room with there's a name for it, I can't remember right now, but where there's a guard outside your door to make sure that you don't harm yourself. And so all he wanted to do was just see his dad. That was the only thing. He was just concerned, was his dad okay? But he was crying and he was shaking. It was a hot mess. So after that, that day we went to go see his dad, and so he could hug his dad and see that his dad was going to be okay. And but out of that, there was a lot of anger, unresolved anger, and it really began to manifest itself over time. And I got him in therapy right after all this happened. He was in therapy for a number of years. All three of the boys were, the three youngest boys were. And, but the anger just really escalated. And I think therapy was good for him. For a number of years, he wanted to be a psychologist. We were very lucky, even though we were on welfare, there was a psychologist in the town that we lived in, and he was able to, he took Peach State. So the boys got good recovery. But during this time, the anger continued to escalate. And by the time that he was in ninth grade, I would come home. So by this time I'd moved to Augusta, and I was in school, I was working, I was not home. There were days where I was gone for 13 hours a day. It was really a grave struggle. It was and devastating for me because I didn't want to be away from my kids, but I had to make that sacrifice to do what I had to do to try and recover, because I was determined to recover from this no matter what it took. And I remember telling myself all the time, I said, I can do anything for a short period of time. I would say it over and over again to myself, Shelley, you can do anything for a short period of time. This isn't forever. It's not forever. It's a short period of time. So sometimes I would come home and he would have beat the shit out of his brother, like literally, like John Isaac would have like a black eye or a bloody lip. And this went on until John Isaac got big enough really where he could defend himself. And it wasn't every day, it wasn't all the time, but it was enough that it was very traumatic for everyone involved. And then it continued to escalate from there. It was almost like when he no longer had the physical outlet in the home, then he just kind of became a bully, and I even became scared of him. So that went on for a while, and I I kept telling him, you know, bud, this is the best place for you. My home is the best place for you. And I don't want to kick you out. But if you don't figure out, you know, um, how to behave appropriately in the home and not bully and not, I mean, he would get in my face sometimes, and he was bigger than me at this time. I mean, I'm 5'5", but he was bigger than me, and he'd get in my face and just be very verbally aggressive with me. And one of the things that we talked about in our home, John Isaac went some of it through this too when his father left. But one of the things that we would say is, one of the things that I would tell the boys is I'd sit down and they would have outbursts of anger. And I would say, you know, just because you feel bad does not mean that you can treat other people badly. And I'd say, I get it. I get you feel bad and I understand it. And I would feel bad if I were you too, but that doesn't justify treating someone else badly. And we'd have these conversations over and over and over again. And so with Price, though, by the time you are taller than me, you know, you're 15, you're 16, all of this, there's not a lot. He's not listening to anyone at this point, right? So it was during this time, though, and I was really desperate to find some way to help him. Like, he's a great kid. I knew this wasn't who he was. I knew that his potential was limitless. And I knew that he was reacting out of these circumstances that had almost like taken him hostage in his mind, and he didn't really know what to do with it. But it was during this time he had turned 15 and he was 16. And one of the rules in our house is you turn 16 and you get a job and you start pretty much buying everything that you need for yourself, right? I could not really, I couldn't afford to do anything anyway. I don't even know how I paid rent every month, but so they wanted to do things and they had money. You know, they would get a job and they could take a girl on a date or go to prom, or go out to eat, or, you know, whatever. They wanted new clothes, then that's what they did. You know, they supported themselves in that way. I kept a roof over their head. I kept food on the table. And so during this time, though, he was struggling. He had turned 16 and he was really struggling to find a job. And I could tell he didn't want to say it, but I could tell he felt really insecure. Like, he didn't know what steps to take. He didn't know what measures to take. He didn't feel confident. And I don't really micromanage my kids a lot. They would probably argue that differently, but I don't helicopter parent, right? You know, so I'm not micromanaging every day, every single day of their life. Like, when it's time to get a job, get out, find a job. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't do school projects. I don't do science projects. I'm like, you need something, let me know. I'll get it for you. But you got to make your own way in the world. You got to figure it out now, because life is hard and it's good to start figuring out how to do it right now. So I was pulling that with him and he was just not responding. He wasn't taking action, and I could tell it was not because he was being belligerent. It's that he was fearful and he was scared and he didn't know what to do, and he didn't have a man in his life to lead him or show him the way. So I really took him by the hand, and at one point I had worked at Publix as a cashier. Publix in the Southeast is a grocery store. And so I went and spoke with the management there, and I took Price with me and I said, okay, bud, here's what you do. I'm going to introduce you to the manager, and I'd already taught my kids how to shake hands. They were really good at that. They knew to give a firm handshake and look someone in the eye. And so I said, you're going to do that, and we're going to talk to the guy and let's see what happens. So we went and he got a job, and while the home life continued to deteriorate, in other ways he got better because he had pocket money and he had a job, and they loved him because he was so hard working, and it just boosted his confidence in this way. And here is the lesson that I want to point out in this, in this point here, is that, you know, sometimes we just need help to take action. You know, this whole meetup was, you know, fear versus destiny, right? And sometimes we're scared sometimes we don't know what the right thing to do is. And unfortunately for us here in this group, we don't have a mom or a dad who can take us by the hand and guide us, even though that is something we might like to have, we don't. And so we need to ask, if you're struggling to take a step because you're frightened or you're insecure or you don't know which way to go, um, ask for help. Find someone who can help you, and don't stop until you find them. I have to say, in my own life, it's taken me a long time to find mentors to help me pave my way in my career. I had no business acumen when all this happened. I had no idea how corporate America worked. I couldn't speak corporate ease. I didn't know the language. And so I just kept knocking on doors saying, hey, can I talk to you? Can I talk to you? So I could get some help. So that's the point there. Luckily for Price, he had me to step in and see what was going on with him and be able to take action on his behalf. And it played out well for him. But if you don't have that person in your life, ask for help. So he got the job, his own confidence boosted. He had money in his pocket. But in spite of that, the family dynamic really began to decline. And eventually I did have to kick him out of the house. And when I did that, it was a very, very difficult thing to do. And in fact, because it was so tense in the home, I wasn't present when I told him, and I told him that if I felt fearful in any way, I was going to immediately call the police. So that's how that went down. And luckily, no one in the family knew how, well, I don't know if this is luckily or not, but no one in my family really knew how bad it was. But that night I called my mom and I told her about it, and they came up the next day and just helped me walk through that over the next couple of days, and kind of their presence helped de-escalate the situation a little. And we loved on Pricey, and we took him out to his favorite restaurant. He loves burgers and fries. I could hardly get that kid to eat any healthy food. But anyway, so we took him for burgers and fries, took him out. We loved on him for a couple of days. And then he went to go live with his dad. During this time, he was extremely angry with me for kicking him out, which is understandable. I get that. But for me, I felt like my role in that was, even though that he was angry, it was something I had to do. And it ended up being the best thing for him because he grew up a lot. And I just continued to pursue him. I wasn't going to allow his bad attitude or his anger or whatever to keep me from checking in with him, talking to him, letting him know that I loved him, letting him know that I cared for him. And I think I've done a lot of things wrong as a parent, for sure. I mean, what parent doesn't screw up a lot? As humans, it's kind of, we're coded that way to screw up. But that is one thing I think is a right thing that I did, was I provided accountability, and I also accountability and discipline, and then I also really loved him, and I worked hard to marry those two together to the best of my ability. And in this situation, that played out well, because he ended up coming back to Augusta, and over time our relationship completely healed, and it blossomed, and he has become such a loving and kind son to me after all that. Right when he left, even the younger brothers were like, we're so glad he's gone, because it was so tense and difficult with him here. It was really, really bad. And now it's like a 180. And that's been a number of years ago. He's 22 now. So it's just been more than I could have ever dreamed. We have a super great relationship. But during that time when he came back, one of the things I did was, he obviously no longer worked at Publix because he had left, but I had worked at Apple, another place I'd worked at, Apple Store. And so he is very technologically savvy. And I reached out to one of the managers there, and I said, hey, would you give Pricey a shot? Would you interview him? And so they interviewed him, and they hired him against their better judgment, because he was 18 when they hired him. He was about to turn 19. And Apple doesn't really hire people under 20 very often, because it takes a certain a certain maturity to work there, and especially to learn their culture and to be able to operate in their customer service friendly culture. And so, so he went in, and within 6 months, he had a promotion. Within 6 months, he had a promotion. He went in as a technical specialist, and he got a promotion, and he stayed there for about 2 years and just excelled. And it was really his first taste of real success, right? In this type of environment where you are rewarded for success, by getting promotions. He was made an expert. They asked him to be an expert, and people would talk about, I would get texts from my former colleagues that still work there and just said, we really thought he was going to fall flat on his face, but he has blown us away. He is just such a mature kid for his age. So of course, as a mom, I was super thrilled to hear that, but also that taste of success propelled him on to what he has now achieved in the military. So, he left the Apple store, and he joined the Navy like his other brother. He took the ASVAB, scored super high. He selected a job as IT. And then he went off to school, went to boot camp, and then went off to school. Now, let me just say this. When Pricey was in high school, he barely graduated. It was just every semester, it was touch and go. I was like, are you going to fail or are you going to pass? Are you going to fail or are you going to pass? Nothing I said made a difference. I couldn't ground him. I stopped grounding him because it didn't make any kind of difference. But this kid, he'd had a taste of success at the Apple store, and he saw what that did and how that felt. And that kid went to a school, and he graduated #1 in his class. #1. This is the kid who I didn't think was going to graduate high school, and he goes off to A school and graduates #1 in his class. And what that did for him is that allowed him to jump from an E1 to an E3. I don't know if any of you are military out there and know about this stuff. I feel like I'm still learning, even though I've had 2 kids in the military. I feel still really too clueless. I should be more aware. But so here it, and then after that, after he joined, he went off to SASBO, and within a year and a half, he was elevated to an E5. And he is 22 years old, and he has a team of 7 that report to him. So here is a lesson in that to think about, right? So work until you have a taste of success. Success will breed and feed more success, right? It will give you the confidence that you need. So while you are, what did Pricey do to have to make that top grade in his class? Well, he studied all the time, and it wasn't something that he'd ever done before, but he was willing to make the sacrifice. He was willing to delay gratification in order to achieve this goal. He had had a taste of success. He knew what that felt like, and he was willing to make the sacrifices to have it happen again. So that's Pricey. And John Isaac had a similar experience in terms of figuring out making sacrifices and delaying gratification, but his was in a completely different vein. And so John Isaac is 2 years younger than Price, and they were in high school together at the same time, stacked there. And they both ran cross country. So one of the rules in my house is you have to pick 2 sports, or I'm picking them for you. And if I pick them, I'm going to choose running. One, because I'm a runner and I love running, and I know what it does to my brain because it helps keep me emotionally stable and happy. And it's also, if you're a single mom, it is a really inexpensive sport for your children to participate in, because all I got to do is find a pair of shoes on sale for them to run in, and some Walmart shorts or something, it doesn't cost a lot. So, and athletics are important, right? We need to exercise. And it was important to me to set a foundation, not just of an example, because I've been running my whole life and I talk about the benefits of it, but I wanted them to experience it as well. And Price was a stupendous runner. Naturally gifted. When he started running, it was either his freshman or sophomore year, he started running cross country. The coach came to me and he was like, Shelley, he could be #1 in the state of Georgia. That is how naturally talented this kid is. And so I was like, well, dude, you could be a collegiate athlete. Like, that would be pretty cool. I mean, not many people get to experience that. And he just wouldn't have any of it. His love is soccer. He ran because I said you have to pick 2 sports. And he did it, but he didn't really, and he was good at it. I mean, he competed in state every year. I mean, he was a top runner, one of the top 7 on the team, but he never really gave it the effort to get to the level that he could if he wanted to. But with John Isaac, I don't even know that John Isaac is really as naturally talented a runner as Price was. But John Isaac is very, very competitive. Very competitive. And so his whole goal with running cross country was to beat his brother. He just wanted to beat his brother. That's all that he cared about. And so every season, that's what it was about. What was Price's time? What was my time? What was Price's time? What was my time? So he was chasing hard on the heels of Pricey. And then his sophomore year, we had 2 older boys on the team, and really good guys. Both went off to college to run. One went into the Air Force Academy and ran there, and then one went to Furman and ran. And they were just good guys. And you know what these good guys did? They invested in my John Isaac. And one of the things that was such a struggle as a single mom is finding men to invest in your boys. And so I would get them involved in like church and youth group. I would try to pick dynamic churches that had, men involved so they could see, so they could connect with other older men, wiser men. But it's hard, it's hard because my boys are not going to learn how to be a man from me. I can teach them certain things, like I taught them how to shake hands, and I've taught them a lot of valuable things, but I just felt like they needed that. So John Isaac ended up having these 2 older boys. They were seniors, they were team captains, invest in him that year, and they would invite him to go running on the weekends with him. They would take him out on these random trails, out in the middle of the nowhere. And out of that, John Isaac really began to think seriously about running. He realized that if I gave effort, I could be good here. And he sat down with me after cross country season sophomore year, and he said, I want to run D1, Mom. And I said, okay. I said, well, let's talk about what that's going to take. Because at this point, he hadn't been really self-disciplined. He hadn't been making any sacrifices. He didn't run through the summer. That was a sacrifice he didn't want to make. He had other things that were way more important. And so I said, this is what it's going to look like, bud. I said, you know what? You're going to have to run when you don't feel like running. You're going to have to run when your friends want to hang out. You're going to have to hang out with them later. You're going to have to delay that. You're going to have to run when it's cold and the weather isn't pleasant, but you're going to have to do it anyway. You're going to have to run when you're tired, because one of the things is that he had to work on Fridays, and Fridays was always run on your own after school day. Well, he had to get up and run on Friday morning before school started. And do you know what that kid did? He did it. He did all of that. He did all of that. And I'm going to continue with this story in just a minute. But one of the things I want to say, this is a little lesson highlight here, is that, invest in somebody. If you have the ability, if you have the time, if you have a passion in some area, if somebody crosses your path who is, maybe younger or older but less experienced, and you feel impressed, it comes into your mind, invest in them. It doesn't take a lot to invest in someone, and especially the next generation, and especially maybe at least single mom or a single dad, who has daughters or sons. Maybe you could take time once a month or something. Find someone, if you need mentoring, If you need someone to invest in you, just like I was talking about during Price's story, you know, find someone to invest in you. Ask. And you're going to have to be brave in that. You're going to have to reconcile a fear of rejection in that. You know, we've talked about here in 52 Living Ideas how strong that fear of rejection is within us, and it keeps us from doing the things that maybe we ought to do. So I would say face that and ask. And I'd like to give a quick plug here. So when my LinkedIn post went viral, I had a LinkedIn post go viral about my home I bought last year. One of the things I started was a mentoring program. And so I select 2 individuals to mentor for a 6-month period of time. And I meet with them once a month. But it's been really beneficial. It's been very encouraging to hear where they've come and where they're going. And if someone here tonight would be interested in that, you can send me a message either through Meetup. They have a messaging option there, or you can email me at shelley@shelleyunderwood.com, or you can just catch me here at the Meetup. So anyway, invest in someone, find someone to invest in you. Very important. So at this point, we're at sophomore year. Sophomore year, he picks up track. He then starts running through the summer. And junior year, he stays injured. We get him to a PT, and I can't afford for him to have physical therapy. But what does that kid do? Every day he's doing his physical therapy, every single day. And I don't say anything. I'm not saying, and by this time, if you've had kids, you know, by the time they get about 13, there's not a heck of a lot that you can tell them. So I'm not telling John Isaac to do anything. I'm like, either he's going to do it or he's not going to do it. And he's either going to succeed or he's not going to succeed. But the kid wanted it. And he was willing to make the sacrifice to every single day get up. And he finally got better. And, you know, this is kind of a blur. It may have been that he was injured. He got injured in cross country and then was really injured in track, or maybe between times. But anyway, track season was a bear. He was in a bad mood all the time because he was pissed off that he was injured. He felt like it was ruining his chances of being a D1. And then that kid, you know what he did? We went to state, and we're a 6A school. So we're a large school. And he was ranked 16th for the mile. And he came in 8th, and he got on the podium, which was his goal. So then he went on, and his whole thing was to go run at the University of Georgia. That consumed his senior year. We got invited to do an official visit. And let me just say, it was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. I mean, it was just us, you know, it wasn't like a bunch of kids, and they like wined us and dined us and put us up in a hotel, and we went to fancy restaurants, and we got to see all the secret underground stuff and where the, you know, it was just amazing. And so he was really salivating at this point. And his grades were not bad, but they weren't great. And so the coach had to pull some strings, and it was to the bitter end. It was like we were holding on hope. Was he getting in? And at the last minute, he got the word, he got in. And so such a great story of going from really just not giving a care in the world about something to caring and making all kinds of sacrifices, delaying gratification, and achieving this goal, this dream. And I would tell him, I was like, babe, just to let you know, it doesn't always happen this quickly, right? Sometimes it takes longer. And he's really living that now, because he stepped foot on the campus of UGA for training and stayed injured his entire freshman year. He didn't get to compete one time. They ended up redshirting him. And then right when he was coming back, COVID hit. So he didn't run it all freshman year. Luckily, they redshirted him. So he's talking about coming back and staying an extra year so that he can have his full 4 years to run. But then he has just stayed injured off and on. It has been, I don't know. I keep wondering how he is staying so positive and hopeful and upbeat and really looking towards the future. And he keeps getting injured. And thank God he's at a D1 school, because they have all kinds of crazy stuff to help him get better. Like he's got this thing called the Alter G. He's like running in water, and he's strapped up, and so he doesn't put pressure on his feet. And he's picked up swimming to keep his fitness elevated. All these things he's doing. He has like, they do cupping, on the muscles, they do all kinds of cool stuff, but it's really been a struggle. And so he got better. He actually had his first indoor track meet. I have it recorded. I couldn't attend because of COVID, but like I bought some subscription to something like ESPN so I could watch it. And anyway, it was just thrilling to see him run his first race. And then he was injured back again after that. And so it's been, hit or miss, but he is staying the course. And that's the thing I'm most impressed with. He's achieved this goal. It's not playing out like he'd hoped, but he continues, when he's running and training, and right now he is running and training, he's healthy right now. He's getting up every morning. He runs. He's meeting with a nutritionist. That's another choice he's made. He goes regularly to PT. They follow his legs really carefully. So anyway, great story there. I feel like both of those kids really overcoming a lot and setting their mind to a task and being willing to make the necessary sacrifices and delay gratification where needed. Now, I've been talking a lot tonight, a little bit longer than I normally do, but I do want to say one more thing, a couple of more things. So I've been out of pocket the last, I guess, month. Normally I'm much more active on 52 Living Ideas, but I've had, in fact, I've really been missing my Jordan Peterson meetups because I love going to those. But I've had a lot going on in my life. Some has been we've had some mild illness going, through my house, and that has been an issue. But I've also been interviewing for a lot of jobs. I made a decision that I needed to take my career to the next level. Some things that happened in my current, on my current team, and I felt like that's what I needed to do. Backing up a little bit though, when I first started this journey, one of the reasons I run is because it literally kept me out of some major depression. When you have no resources, when you're at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's very, very limiting in what your brain has the capacity to deal with. And so for me, I really had to keep endorphins in my brain as much as I possibly could. And so, but in spite of that, I would still have moments of real just grief. Like I every couple of months I would just become really despondent over the fact that I was never going to be successful. And I would usually cry to one of my good friends, one of my good girlfriends, and it brings up even emotions now as I think about it, because I really believed. I was like, there was this part of me that was like, if I work hard enough, I can do anything for a certain amount of time, and I'm going to make it. And there was this other part of me that was just like, I'm never going to be successful. I'm never going to be able to get off welfare. I'm never going to have a career. I'm never going to achieve what is in my head to achieve. But I kept trying, and that's where that mantra of mine would really come into play. I will not allow fear to dictate my destiny. And so even though I'd be depressed and I would be fearful and I would be anxiety ridden, I would still keep stepping forward. And one of the things when I got to the company that I work for now, I actually just had my 5-year anniversary. I had no clue. Like I had no business acumen. I remember someone saying, I just don't have any bandwidth for that. I remember going, bandwidth? My Wi-Fi is working fine. I don't know what's wrong with yours. I mean, I had no clue that bandwidth meant I don't have any time to take that meeting or whatever. I was just clueless. Like I just didn't know. And so, but I just kept asking. I kept looking for mentors. I kept asking other women, how are you navigating corporate America? Like, tell me your story. What has been your career journey? I mean, I was just desperate to figure this out. And I kept raising my hand, right? I mean, I remember on my the first team I was on, I was in implementation, and they weren't giving me enough work to do. And I kept bugging the shit out of my leader. I was like, dude, I do not want to sit for 8 hours a day in this cubicle doing, like, working for 3 hours. Like, give me work to do. And he finally put me on another team. So I actually reported to 2 managers, and I stayed busy, and I was much happier. I got promoted in about a year. And then I was an account manager for several years, and I kept raising my hand. I kept raising my hand. If something needed to be done, I was raising my hand. I was trying crazy shit that I was like, I would go, oh, they don't do this in corporate America. Okay, well, I won't offer to do that anymore. Like, I just, I was trying all kinds of stuff. And I just had to say, to hell with my ego, to hell with it. I was going to do whatever it took to figure it out and get to the next level. And one of my goals was to get in the client success space. I felt like that would be a really good fit for me. It's like a hot thing right now. Everybody's talking about client success, especially in the SaaS industry. But the company I work for is not a SaaS company, but we do have client success consultants and executives and managers and all of that. So finally, a year and a half ago, I got hired, and I got the title that I've been wanting, client success consultant. It was a big jump in pay. Both of my promotions had been a big jump in pay. And so I joined this team, and this is where there's a rule in Peterson's new book, and it says, opportunity lays where responsibility has been abdicated. And this is 100% true in every way. If it could be 200% true, it would be 200% true, because let me tell you folks, if you are trying to elevate your career, any area of your life, look for where no one else wants to do something. So I cannot tell you all the things I do on my team that are not part of my job description. And I love it. I don't mind it, because I like being busy, but I also know it helps other people, and it gives me opportunity to learn, and it adds to my resume. There's lots of positive things. So about 2 months ago, I decided I was going to start looking for a new job, and there was a job at my company that came available, and it was I had to tell my leader that this is what I was going to do, that I was going to apply. And she said, okay, but I really would like you to stay on my team, and I'm going to see if there's something I can do about that. And I was like, well, my company is a giant Fortune 300 monster global company. They do not give a rat's ass about keeping me with them. You know what I'm saying? They don't care. I was like, okay. So I'm interviewing for this role, and I'm, second interview, third interview and all, but I'm also interviewing for a role outside my company, and I'm getting second interview, third interview, and they are loving me. So this week, I get on my one-on-one with my leader. It was Wednesday. And she's like, no, I'm sorry. She called me Tuesday. At home in the evening. She's like, hey, Shelley, I was just wondering if you could lead this meeting for me. You could do this presentation. I'm not going to be able to do it. And I was like, of course, absolutely. And then she said, and Shelley, I'm going to tell you something else. She said, HR has approved a promotion and a raise for you if you'll stay on my team. And she said, I really want you to stay on my team. I don't want to lose you. You're a leader. You're a top leader on our team. So I just had a meeting with her today. I've countered that raise because of my other job that I've been interviewing for and what that salary is. And she is going back to HR. And I think I am going to be getting something like a 30% raise, a promotion, and I'm now bonus eligible. And I'm going to stay on my team that I love. And I get to keep doing what I love doing. Now, that's a great success story. But y'all have also heard where I've been. And it's taken me 10 years to get to this place. And it's a place I still cannot believe it. I'm like pinching myself. I mean, the money is just in my mind. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying it's mind boggling, because I didn't think it was ever going to happen. I just didn't think it was ever going to happen. And now when this goes through, I will be able to rest for the first time. I won't have to think about what is my next move? What is my next step? Where do I have to go now? What changes do I have to make now? I can rest here. I can continue to be an expert in my field. I can be a leader on my team. And what I would say is that can be anybody. That can literally be you if you are struggling in a certain area of your life to achieve your goals and your aims. But it's going to take hard work, and it's going to take hard choices, and it's going to mean you have to say, I want to do this thing here, but I'm not going to because I'm trying to get here. So I'm not going to do this thing here so I can continue to climb this way, right? And if I can do it, I'm not going to lie. If I, a mother with 5 children who has no resources and no money and is on welfare, if I can do it, as God is my witness, said Scarlett O'Hara, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And thank you for allowing me to share that. And I hope there were some good lessons and some encouragement. And you know what? Don't hate me. As I've been reading Peterson, and listening to his biblical series, ironically, there were some quotes that came up, and I'd just like to read them to you guys today. This is from Peterson's biblical series, number 4. You make sacrifices in the present so the future is happy with you. Sacrifice is a contract with the future. So 10 years ago, when I began making sacrifices, I was contracting with me today. And now I've fulfilled the contract. He goes on to say, we bargain with the future through current day sacrifice and thus minimize suffering. Put off something impulsive today for the future. And then, Joe, I have the questions. I don't think they were added to, and I'm done. I'm sorry.
Sure. No. Thank you for sharing. And we will go to breakout rooms right now.
Let me put the
what are the
questions
questions?
in.
Yeah. So why don't you announce the questions and then put them in the chat, and then I can set up.
Okay, that sounds good. Hold on a second. Okay, I'll read them, and then I've got to find them in my notes and copy and paste them in there. So forgive me, it'll just take a second. But
are they the ones on the website?
Oh, did they get put up?
Do you have a goal that you have yet to achieve?
Yes. Oh, I didn't see them. Yeah, they got put up. So can someone paste them in there, and then I'll read them? Does that sound good, Joe?
Sounds good.
Okay. So the questions we're going to talk about in the breakout room are: do you have a goal that you have yet to achieve? What sacrifices are you avoiding that would help you achieve this goal? If you were to make these sacrifices and take steps towards your goal, what would that look like? It's kind of like creating a plan, right? And what is holding you back from taking these steps? What can you do to mitigate not taking the steps? So thank you.
Everybody, I think everybody's back. So now we can ask Shelley questions. As always, the 4 rules are, and I'm going to try and remember them off the top of my head, is type exclamation point if you have a question or comment. Keep on topic, be brief, and feel free to disagree, but be respectful. So we will start with Kevin.
Shelley, another amazing presentation. I enjoyed.
I can't hear you, Kevin.
Oh, can you hear me now? Thank you. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Shelley. I got a question actually. Would you share a little bit your question about yourself? The 4 questions, if you don't mind, anyone you can share more would be great. Like you do have a goal yet not achieved yet. Thank you.
You're going to have to repeat your question. I'm so sorry, Kevin. I struggled to understand that, and please forgive me.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a goal that you have yet to achieve yet?
Oh, do I have a goal that I have yet to achieve yet? Okay.
Yeah, the 4 questions you posted would be interesting.
Yes.
You can share for yourself.
That's a really good question, Kevin. So let me just say, I may have to think about that, because I've had this huge goal to get to a certain level of income. And one of my big problems has been is that I'm never retiring, like never. And in fact, when I told my leader I was going to have to leave her team, even though I love what I do, I love my team, I love my job, I love coming to work every day, I was like, there's no room for advancement. And I told her, I said, Lisa, I'm never retiring. Like, and I cannot be a burden to my children in society, right? I'm going to be like the little old lady being a Walmart greeter at the age of 108, just trying to put food on the table. You know, that's going to be me. So my big goal in life, Kevin, has been to get to a particular income level. That has been what I've been working for. And so I'm going to be there. I know she's going to come back with an offer that I have counter to her. I feel we've had a conversation, a transparent conversation. And so that's been the overarching goal all these years. So this is huge for me. So Kevin, I'm going to have to think about what my next goal is, right? And maybe my next goal is going to be something fun. Like my son is in Japan and I want to go travel to Japan and be able to see him because I love Oriental food, and I'm going to eat my face full of Oriental food and see beautiful sights. And I have some dreams with traveling. I want to go to Patagonia. I want to see the Andes Mountains. So maybe it'll be time in my life now where those get to be some of my dreams, things that I thought I would never get to do or see in life. And maybe now I'll have the opportunity to do those and also retire before the age of 108.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's not a bad goal, right, Kevin?
I agree.
So next we have Zhang, followed by Zhao. Is it? If forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, and then Julie.
Yeah, Shelley, great lecture. Great speech. Your story is very inspiring always, and your kids looks great. Very handsome boys.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the question I have is, it seems to me we always have a lot of goals in life, and it's all about priorities. For example, I mentioned several times ago, I have this goal to surf before I come to America. I want to surf, ski, and visit buildings. And all the other two things I've done, but I haven't successfully surfed. So finally, I went to Hawaii this time and did twice a class and stand up. So I kind of fulfilled my goal in some way, but there's still a long way to go. But I mean, I realize it's not my top priority. That's why I can't really go there surfing every day.
Right.
I still get back to life to do my other duties. But I think I realize, have so many goals in life. It's all about priority, the timing. We have to, that's maybe sacrifice. I have to make sure my kids, go to college before I can totally free. And hopefully I'm still physically fit enough to do all the things I want to do. So
I imagine you would be.
Thank you.
Well, here's one comment I would make is, Jane, you said that everyone has goals, and that may very well be true, but I think it's a lot of times it's people state goals, but they don't take action towards the goals. And there can be a variety of reasons as to why someone doesn't do that. And I think the thing that we have to work through for those of us that have goals, but we're struggling to make the choice to take steps towards them, is figure out the why. Because if you don't figure out the why, if you don't figure out the why and then take action to mitigate the why, I mean, what do you want to look back on your life and see, right? So I think that's the important thing, is if you have goals and you struggle to achieve them, then figure out why, and then be really, really brave, and just take one tiny step towards that goal. So that would be my comment there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't see that in my personal
In your personal
experience.
life, I see that.
Yeah, so people call me go-getter. That's maybe the problem. Like I do whatever I want to do. So that's why I don't see this as a challenge for myself. I'm not sure about other people. And also I see your success. I see the key point. So like I like the book Gone with the Wind, the Scarlet, you know. The main thing is you have to have a belief you can succeed. Then everything will come. You ask whatever you ask. I'm not religious, but I believe the Bible said whatever you ask, they will give to you. You just need to ask for it. I think that's the belief is so important. I think that's actually the more important for anybody's success. If they don't have the belief, they will be success. Nothing will happen. I think you have that, and that's the key. I see that's the key reason you can achieve all the things you have achieved.
Well, I think it's been a duality within me. And we've talked about that a lot in 52 Living Ideas at different meetups, right? Because within us, and Peterson talks about it, like all the warring parts within us and how we have all these personalities within us. And so, in 1 minute, I could be literally sobbing uncontrollably about the fact that I'm never going to be successful. And in that moment, believing it. And then the next day, getting my ass out of bed and forcing myself to go and do what I needed to do that day in order to put food on the table and achieve my next goal. So it's this kind of, you've got to balance all of that within you. And maybe, Jane, you may not deal with some of that. And that's, you have probably other things that you have to work through, but I think that's a reality for a lot of people, is that they have goals, but they are struggling to take the necessary action. And at some point you have to just force yourself to do it. I mean, that's what I know for me, that's what I've had to do in spite of all my anxiety and fear. You're on mute, Joe.
Sorry about that. So I have Zhao. Am I saying your name correctly? Zhao next?
Yes, you are. Thank you. Shelley, I was wondering, did in your story, did the husband of did the father of your kids ever go back to your home like periodically, and what did you do about it?
So that's an interesting question. So okay, so the day that he left violently, we were gonna, I was gonna reconcile with him after that. So, which was a lengthy process, right? So when he left, I filed a protective order because of the violence, and we ended up going to court. It was just painful, but my whole desire, I come from divorce. So my parents are divorced, and it's just not what I wanted for my kids. And I struggled with not understanding why my ex-husband would not step into his potential, because I felt like it was there. So there was some back and forth. That was that happened February 1st, the gun incident of 2010. And I did not tell him I was getting a divorce until June. There was a lot of back and forth in that. And the protective order was in place for several months. And then honestly, my church leadership was like, you don't have biblical grounds for a divorce. And so then I was like trying to go, I don't. I was like, really? So then I was like, okay. And then we were trying to reconcile, but I couldn't do it. I was like, it wasn't a safe environment, and he was scaring me. And I just decided, and so then in June, I believe it was June 16th, I actually called a girlfriend of mine who used to be a homeschooling mom like me, a stay-at-home homeschooling mom like me, who divorced her husband. And I called her and I said, do you regret it? And she said, I regret what could have been, but I do not regret no longer being married to him. And that was on a Monday. And then on Wednesday, I called my ex and told him I was getting a divorce. And that was the finality. But it was definitely a lot of back and forth. And it was a very difficult decision. And you would look at that from my story and you would be like, God, why didn't she leave a long time ago? I remember my therapist, I drugged Joey to him once, and he was like, Joey, Shelley stayed with you longer than anybody would have ever stayed with anybody. And I just was desperate to keep my family together. I had a vision for what I wanted. You know, I had a goal for what I thought it was going to look like. I could see it in my head. I could see me and my ex-husband walking on the beach in our old age with our grandchildren around us and this lovely life, but that was not what he wanted. And I had to accept that and move on. Joe, I hope that answered your question. I feel like that was really long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, that was a little bit off topic. So, but it was, I thank you for that answer. So I have Julie next, Tom, and then Mark.
Hi, Shelley.
Hey.
I just wanted to say what a great inspirational story you have been, and what a beautiful example of a great mom who's willing to give to her kids and do what it takes to help them, and also put up boundaries at the same time, and then be forgiving with yourself as far as not being a perfect mom sometimes. And that's a beautiful example for me to see all that. And you were right there with you during your story. And so you almost like learn vicariously through someone's experience because you're with them at each step of the way. And for sharing your vulnerability, I torment myself by with wild imaginings that aren't true. Like everybody got the rule book to life and I didn't, and no one will tell me what the rule is, and just on and on. And it basically it's just all a lie. And so when someone speaks and they take their mask off and they come from a vulnerable place, it's very powerful because it gives me hope as well. That and you made everything very practical and doable. I love that. Stick in there until you see some small success. I believe you that would be powerfully rewarding. And last of all, what I see is you gave, no matter what, you were giving 150% all the time. And that's very relieving to me, because as someone who beats myself up for not having a purpose or not knowing what it is yet, when I just remember I have to put 100% into the moment or 150 into the moment, that I can do that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And just remember, it's not forever, right? It's just in that moment. And if you remind yourself it's not forever, then that helps. And there'll be times where you think it feels like it's going to be forever. And that's where the self-talk, you know, is so important. And what you tell yourself is so important, you know, and so don't beat yourself up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, be real with yourself, you know, but at one of the first meetups on this topic, fear versus destiny, one of the first ones I talked about was making sure you have a balanced understanding of who you are, because you need to be real with yourself and you need to say, okay, I really suck at this and I've got to get better at it. But you can also over here say, but I'm really good at this thing over here. I do this really well, you know? And so, you know, you're real with yourself and you can also build yourself up, and we have to build ourselves up. And I don't mean in that way that sometimes you see people like, I'm all that, and you just, you know, not that kind of attitude, but a real attitude. Like, I'm good at some things and I'm bad at other things, but no one, you can't expect someone else to build you up. You have to own that yourself. You have to understand who you are. You have to understand realistically your strengths and weaknesses. And then you have to take appropriate action to capitalize on your strengths and work to the best of your ability to improve your weaknesses when you need to. So thank you for sharing. Your words of encouragement were so helpful to me personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And so we have Tom next.
Hi, Shelley. So in the chat room, we were conversing about the 3 questions you posed, and we hit the wall at the 3rd one, which is, what's holding you back? And from your experience, what are the most common things that hold people back from achieving their goals?
Fear. 100% fear. Fear of failure. So people are scared to fail. And if that's you, anyone out there listening, if you're scared to fail and that's what is holding you back, I want to say that I've failed so many times. I have failed so many times. I've failed way more times than I've succeeded, but every single failure has been a stepping stone to the next success that I've had. So keep that before you. I do. I think fear is the key thing that holds people back. That would be my answer.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
So, actually just to build on that really quickly, how do you redefine failure? Like, don't you have to redefine failure in that process? I mean, in the sense that isn't that right?
It's a
I
lesson
mean,
learned.
it's
Yes,
a lesson
thank
learned,
you.
yeah,
It's a
because
lesson
that
learned.
as you're going through these things, that's part of the perseverance aspect of it is
Yeah, yeah.
what's
yeah.
really a failure. It's not, it depends on how you look at and frame it. So
I also get the impression that sometimes I found that there is a fear of success, because there are situations when we succeed, well, others might not really like it, but ultimately we might fear that the disapproval of some people because here we are successful. So I think it's a mixed bag of what's in that fear bag.
Yeah, I want to say something if it's okay, Joe, because I studied, they said, some people do fear of success because they don't think they deserve it. So they actually, when they succeed, they always was able to make it not successful later. So it's kind of, they have to break that psychological barrier before they can really successful. When I learned that, I just want to share.
Thank you, Jane.
So I have Mark and then Deborah with an H. I always wanted to say that.
Are you calling on me this Mark?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you put a question in the chat. So.
Oh, I didn't put my name in to speak. Okay. I'll share some of the things I was thinking about. So yeah.
We can go. Okay, that's fine. We can go to Deborah if we want. I just saw your question in the chat and thought you would like to share it.
Go ahead, Deborah. I'll compose my thoughts. I'll put my name.
All right. Yeah. So I made some notes too. Okay. So as Shelley knows, and the people in my group know, I talked about how I feel like I don't really have a direction. I don't have so much of an individual focus. But I do have a lot of interests, which Shelley picked up on. So yes, you're very insightful and perceptive. Yeah, but I was realizing like maybe it's possible to sort of like braid or sort of like weave those multiple threads together. But even if you don't, I think, and I don't know if this is helpful for anyone here. I think sometimes I want to remind myself of this. I think that people can be hard on themselves for not sort of like constantly moving forward or being productive. And I've seen a lot of that actually in this group. People saying like, oh, I was happy with this, but I didn't accomplish something, or I didn't get done as much as I wanted to. So I think it's important sometimes to just kind of celebrate the value of passions and interests, even if they don't lead to concrete accomplishments. Because like, I think having a variety of interests can make you a well-rounded, fascinating person. And there's value in that. I think that makes you capable of relating to and connecting with people. And even though maybe I don't feel like, in some ways I've been productive, but maybe I'm not where I want to be in my life right now. Like I definitely talked about that. I do think one thing that I can say came out of like this pandemic time is that I strengthened my relationships with people. And I feel like I built and formed friendships with people. And I'm really proud of that actually. Like that might not make me money. It might not be something that I can like put down on a resume, or I can say, this is something where it's like some monumental life goal, I guess, but it is something that I feel like provides support and makes me happy, and like is something that I value as a person. And like I said, having those interests, sharing those interests with people and learning, I feel like has value in and of itself, even if it doesn't seem concrete necessarily to other people. Yeah, that was it.
Well, I think that gives you breadth of personality too, right? I mean, it makes you whole and makes you multifaceted. It makes you interesting. And
I put multifaceted down here, yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think in some ways I'm similar to you. I have a lot of different kinds of interests, and I think that brings value to my team, because my interests direct me in a different way maybe than someone else to bring something to the table in a different way, or look at something differently. And so that adds, I guess, diversity, so Yeah, I think you're on the right track, and I think you're going to get there as you keep thinking about it and analyzing it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So Mark, have you gathered your thoughts, or if you don't want to go, that's fine as well.
Okay, yeah, I can go. Just to build a little bit on what Deborah was saying. For people who know me, you're going to hear me talk about values again and the power of values. But I think it is also, I wanted to raise the point of the idea there's different types of goals. That I would, two classifications, one like short-term and long-term. And I think you need to approach them differently. You know, long terms, you need a strategy. You might need to look for help, but you can, you know, it's going to happen over a period of time, and you've got to prepare yourself to be patient for that. And then there are short-term goals, you know, something to get done in the short term. And that's where you've got to say, what action can I be taking to move forward as soon as possible? Those are just some ideas, and I wanted to get your feedback, Shelley, on what you think about that. But more importantly, I wanted to raise this idea, there's goals that you need to do versus want to do. And I think a lot of what your story, Shelley, was you were in the unfortunate position of you needed to do these. These goals were almost thrust upon you by circumstances. Mm-hmm. And I think those goals are that type of goal is very different to where the ones where we're trying to figure out what we want to do. It's like, hey, there was a storm and there's a hole in my roof. See, this is a trivial example, right? My goal is to get the hole in my roof repaired. I didn't have that goal yesterday, but I have that goal now because circumstances forced it upon me. But another goal would be, well, like, yeah, I'd like to get a black belt in martial arts. Okay, you know, that's the longer term goal. It's something I chose to do completely, my choice. So I think it's very important to figure out where your goal, where those goals are coming from. I think sometimes it's easier. It may be more painful, but it's easier to be motivated when life's forcing you towards a goal. But I would still say, although there's an imperative, you still want to see if the approach you're taking does align with values, because now I'm onto my values. Yeah. If you know your values, then I think if you align your goals, those want to do goals more than importantly, that helps with motivation. If your goals don't align with your values, I don't think you're likely to succeed in them, because you won't be motivated, because you don't, you know, it's not really who you are. And so the last part of that is, if you have goals, or you think you have goals now, are they really your goals, or are they other people's expectations or society's expectations? You know, like, hey, I should have a nice car to drive, but like, if I was in a different culture, I'd be happy with a Pinto because I just want to get where I want to get. I don't need a Mercedes. But if I'm in a different culture now, I feel pressure because people look down on the Pinto. But do I want to accede to those societal pressures or not? Are these my goals, to work extra hours so I can drive a Mercedes? Do I really care as a personal value whether I drive a Mercedes or not? You may well do. And there are, you know, it's more complicated, because if people judge you by the car you drive, that could lead to a better job and more income or not. So it's always complicated, but those are the things I wanted to ask you what you thought about that. So basically, goals from forced upon you versus goals you choose, and the approach to short versus long-term goals. I hope that wasn't too much.
Yeah, no, it's always good. I love hearing from you, Mark. And I actually was thinking about you as I was planning and prepping for this, and thinking about values. And I'm really grateful that you continue to bring that up, because now in my head, when I'm running through, you know, I'm driving around town and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. And it really does boil down to values for me that cause me to choose what action I've taken, you know. So one of my number one value is my family and good relationships with my family, right? And so my family has been a huge value, and it's what has motivated me, really, even prior to what had the demise of my life. So I have to say, I was very goal oriented prior to this being thrust upon me, right? So I homeschooled 5 boys. I was in senior executive leadership with a nonprofit organization. I started a homeschool school for children. I, you know, incorporated as 501c3. I got a a board of directors, wrote a set of bylaws, and all these things, right? So my personality is, I see something that needs to be done. Now, thanks to you, Mark, I can say it aligned with my values. So I took action on them, right? So I've been doing that really ever since I had my first kid and realized, oh, this is my value. It's here in my arms right now, right? So, and then in terms of, and I would really encourage anyone here today, really hear what Mark said. If you are struggling figuring out your direction in life, then it would be good to think about, what is it that you value? What is most important to you? Because it will help you dictate what direction you go. And Mark, interestingly, it helped dictate the direction that I made this week when I made a counteroffer to my leader to stay on the team instead of taking a much higher paying job. Because I knew with a higher paying job, there was going to be rapid escalation in terms of moving into executive leadership. But I knew I was going to be working 10 and 12-hour days. And I didn't want to do that because my work-life balance is so important to me. I love to work. Like, I love getting up in the morning. I love working hard. I love my job. But I also love at 10 a.m. I don't have a meeting and I'm out the door for a run. Or at 3 o'clock, my kid's got a track meet and I can plan my schedule around that and go. If you're working in the environment in which I was considering, I was going to be working 12-hour days. I was going to have to really make another major sacrifice. And I didn't want to do that because it didn't align with my values. And it was no longer thrust upon me to do that, because then I could go back and negotiate for more money to get to exactly where I wanted to be so that I could rest and have work-life balance. So anyway, to your point, it was a huge part of my decision-making process and making lists and grids and all kinds of pros and cons and, figuring all that out. But in terms of long-term goals and short-term goals, it's interesting you asked that question because I'm just a natural goal setter. So I don't think about it. It's not like I have to say to myself, oh, I'm going to make some short-term goals now. I've always just got short-term goals. Like I'm like, for this week, my goal is to run a minimum of twice or 4 times. Like, that's a short-term goal, right? And then I've always got long-term goals. Like, the money thing has been a big one, or getting to Japan. It's a giant goal of mine to get to Japan with my kid, my youngest son, so I can see Price and we can experience that together. And then I have goals, around the house. And this is the next thing I'm doing for my new house. I'm working on this room. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, after this room is done, then I'm working with this room. So I don't know. I think it would be helpful if someone isn't goal setting to consider what Mark is talking about making, thinking about short-term and long-term goals. But me personally, it's just like kind of how my brain automatically thinks. Not sure that really answered your question.
Well, can I just follow up on that one thing about this, the use of the word goal? When you said, like, you have a goal to, like, do over a room in your house or something like this, I don't think of those as goals. I think of those as things maybe I want to do or I intend to do, but they're not a goal. Because to me, a goal is something that if I don't get to it, I will feel I let myself down. Whereas lots of things I would like to do or I want to do, but if I don't get to them, I'm not going to beat myself up. That's why I don't really have goals anymore. That's why I struggle to answer your questions, because do you, when you say a goal, is a goal something that if you don't achieve it, that's a problem? Or
I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm literally, and part of me, this is part of the downside of me, right? In fact, my running buddy Glenn was like, he made this graph for me about urgent but important, urgent, not important. And I was like, how could anything in the name of Jesus be urgent and not important? And on my list, everything is urgent. Everything is always urgent because I've got to get it done. And so if it doesn't get done, I feel very uncomfortable. I feel like,
okay, I have a.
It's not a good thing. It's not. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I am saying I am wired that way.
Okay, I have a song for you, and then I'm going to shut up. It's the title of it is "Let It Go."
Easier said than done for some people, Mr. Mark.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have daughters. You may not know Frozen if you only have a son.
Oh, it's from that. I thought it was like, isn't there a Beatles song? I don't know.
Well,
Anyway, I'm not really culturally hip. I'm sorry.
there is something that I want to follow up on before we come to Jang and Kevin. That Mark talked about is the idea of needs and wants, because it's something we talk about here at 52 Living Ideas. We had a whole series on developing your ideal self. And your ideal self is what you want to be. That's what you're writing down, and those are goals. But I've often brought up, there was a scenario where there's a person that I work with, she was a person that was lost her brother, who was her closest friend, to cancer, was going to lose her husband, and now her daughter has cancer. So defining your ideal self in that kind of context, it's kind of like one foot after the other. She's just getting through day by day, and she's just trying to meet her needs. The interesting thing that what Mark just separated is that you've been able to go from needs to wants using your values, which are your kids. And that's a pretty interesting combination, that because a lot of people don't necessarily make that progression. And so that's something that's really unique to your story, and it speaks to perseverance. And separating it between needs and wants is a really good way and powerful way of looking at it. So I just want to add that. So Jang, then Kevin.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I think actually Mark's question makes me think too. I mentioned I read this book, Flow. It's so inspiring, sums up everything. And it mentioned about, in the end, goal is very important. But in the end, it's also about the meaning of our life. Basically, the flow, we find one life purpose to flow. So like one big theme that can connect all the smaller goals, everything else. I wonder if that's maybe also purpose of life or meaning of life, or that may be some bigger goals in general.
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying that, because that's a meetup. I'm actually going to do a meetup at some point on that when I start wrapping all of this up. And that's going to be, what do you want to look back on one day? And that's been a huge motivator for me in life and the choices I make. Just, what do I want to look back on, at the end of time? What do I want to see? And pondering on that, it's been helpful for me.
So I have Kevin and then Mark again.
Thank you, Joe. I want to join this debate. I like the title today. They call it sacrifice and delayed gratification. So that's the golden rule. Very simple. You want to. There's no free lunch as general. Possible you have good heritage, or something you got a lottery. That's rare. Normally, let's see after high school, you go to university, you need 4 years, 5 years. You need to select hard subject or the easy one. Or you can just go work, make the cash right away. If you do that way, possible for your life, you're gonna keep struggling. That's very simple, That's if let's say, okay, I'll do it hard way. I need this, 5 years, reset my goal again. And another point about the value and goal, I would say it's ongoing. It's you keep redirection of the loop, right? You have to verify more accurate, more firmly. Also, age matters. The 30 years goal is totally different than 50 years. After 70 years done. Thank you.
So then I have Jang.
70 years done.
No.
I mean, what are you talking about?
I'm done. Yeah, that's for. I'm sorry about my words. I mean, That's 70 years. Like we have a barrier here. I admire him. I mean, we don't, let's see, normally generally we want a house as a top priority, right? That's my goal or value.
I already
So-
did that part. I'm not,
Yeah, I mean, that's, I mean,
my days.
we don't, let's say, I'm going for another, let's say, I want to learn another degree or 4 or 5 years possible. There are people doing that.
Yeah.
So I think I have, did Jen go? Because I had a call that came in, but if not, then Mark's next.
I think Jane did go. I think it's Mark's turn.
Okay, so Mark, go ahead.
Oh,
Forgive me.
I just had a couple of thoughts popped into my head. We've talked about this before, like when you're doing goals, some people often get into this thing that they won't feel good about themselves if they're not achieving goals. Like they link their sense of self-esteem, as I'll refer to it, to, am I achieving my goals or not? I've talked about this before. Like I strongly urge people not to do that, because it doesn't lead to a happy life, in my opinion. And I don't see, I think I'm fairly strong in my belief of that. Succeeding or failing is largely beyond your control. The effort, you trying is not, that's you. The success or failure, there's, we live in my mind, we live in a probabilistic universe. It's like playing poker, as I said before. You can play the cards the best, but you can still lose to the lucky player. And that's life. So if you have to tie your self-esteem to something, tie it to the effort, not to the outcome. And building on that, I guess in the way I use the word goal, I have very few goals. I've simplified myself, tried to get rid of things that I found confusing. Like I used Buddhism to try and help me with this. But so I guess my most important goal is a very simple one. Try and live according to your values. And I would like to suggest that other people might want to think about that. So if you feel like you're failing in your other goals that you don't have control over the outcome, ask yourself, did I try and live up to my values? And I get a lot of personal comfort when I can say to myself, yeah, I did. I may not have done the best job, but I was trying. And that I found very helpful in terms of getting rid of my perfectionism and having that ego attachment to outcomes, which I think is very, very dangerous. And then those values you have apart from that, like I would say, try and make them as encompassing but as simplistic as possible. When you try and make them complex or specific, that means that you can start judging yourself or judging outcomes again. So I think in terms of things like values, I'm talking personally now, remember that you don't have control over outcomes, compassion and egalitarianism. And I could talk about what comes from that in terms of specifically how I think about what those terms mean to me, but I just try to have like this hierarchy at the simplest level. Live according to your values. What values does that mean? Try and do no harm, be compassionate, treat everybody equally. And to me, that gets me 90% of the way through, am I living the life I want to be living? I just wanted to share that and see if anybody else had any thoughts on that.
Well, Mark, well, maybe others are thinking and decide to make a comment. I will comment on two things. With the failure of my marriage, I came to that conclusion because I thought, well, if the success of my marriage was based on how hard I worked, it would have been successful. But even though I gave and gave and gave and worked and worked and worked and sacrificed, it was not successful. And so I learned through that experience that I had very little control over any outcomes. The only control that I had was over how hard I worked. And then, or what my actions were. And then, ironically, just, was it last week, my son was over here and I was telling him about, I've been applying for a ton of jobs. And I've been looking for a while, right? I mean, it's always been about my next step up. And he's like, we were talking, well, Mom, the statistical odds are in your favor. I mean, if you just keep trying, eventually somebody's going to say yes. And I was like, baby, you're right. That's why I'm just going to keep trying, because eventually, statistically, it will happen. But it wasn't so much tied to, I don't know necessarily what I was doing. It was just I had to keep doing it because eventually it would play out, you know. So I don't know. Felt like that kind of aligns with what you were saying.
Yeah, I'll just say something very quickly is that something else that Mark said that's really, really important is the idea of specifying and being able to state our values very simply, because if they're very complex, it becomes very difficult to manage your life towards those values. But saying them simply makes it a lot easier to not only live towards those values, but you have to really think about them as well if you're going to state them simply, if they're going to be all encompassing. So that's a really important point as well. Jang did raise her hand again. And
Yeah, I want to say something. I think we all do everything based on our value. You know, it's either we know it or not knowing it. We always do it. I think maybe it's different personality. Maybe some people are more perfectionist. When they set a goal, they don't do it, then they feel a failure. But for some people like me too, I have to set different goals in my life. And it just helped me to move forward. I think people have different approach, you know, with life. And I found it's kind of funny, the self-improvement of all the books we're reading. It seems like people trying to figure out the right way to succeed. And every book have point out different directions. Like you have this 1,000 hours practice, you know, put out these hours, you know, single-mindedly they'll be successful. And then there's a book range that, oh no, you don't have to do that. There are people doing different way. They try different sports. They don't have to stuck with one instrument at age 3 or 4. So I guess we all have to figure out our own approach, you know, and personalizing goal is important. And I think it's more important is figure out the meaning or purpose in life, which can connect all your goals. You have a big flow in your whole effort. So really improve your life quality.
Joe, so with what you and Mark were talking about values, it's really interesting how Mark continuing to bring this up has really impacted how I think. But you know how Peterson talks about first we live it, and then we tell a story, and then out of the story we extract the truth, right? That's how he kind of talks about his value in terms of like the different stories that are carried out through the Bible. Well, anyway, maybe you don't know about that, but anyway, like what I think is as Marcus talked about values, I've sat back and I've looked and I've been like, well, what are the things that I'm choosing in life that are the most important, that direct my action? And it's been those things that I've been able to, now that I've been living all these years, that I've looked back on and I've been like, oh, Shelley, that's a value. And I've thought about it that way. And I think, Joe, it's really important. What you said is that I'm actually going to start succinctly writing these down so that I can articulate them instead of it just being lived in this story, this journey of my life, and something that I actually can articulate. So anyway, yeah. Thank you.
No, I mean, Mark always has great insights. Mm-hmm. So no, but it really is important. And actually, Shrikant had let him meet up on principles that actually speaks to this, and how do you manage yourself to principles. Mm-hmm. And then you have your values and your objectives and your goals and your actions that fall underneath that. So it kind of succinctly fits together, but you have to have defined principles that you're not going to violate before you can actually state that. So I don't know if there are any more questions, but I will just do a quick announcement. One, I would just like to thank you, Shelley, for again speaking this evening. It's been fantastic, and thank you everybody for joining. It's been amazing. You could just check the website for meetups this weekend. There are 4, I believe. There's tomorrow at 12 o'clock. There's one on psychology in the self and individuation, and that is with Brian McVeigh. That's part of series that's being led by Shrikant. And there is the Lewis Sullivan Forms Follows Function, which is a panel discussion that is at 2:30 on Saturday. And there's the Advent of Consciousness in Children. And I don't know who's leading that actually. Oh, it might be just Shrikant. And then Sunday is a very Marshall McLuhan's Trivium with Peter Berkman, and that should be really, really good. And that is at 2:30. So those are the 4 meetups this weekend. Keep a lookout for the website, and thank you everyone for joining this evening.
Hey, Joe, hold on one
Yes.
second.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to make one
Yeah,
comment. Hey,
sure.
Elena, you made the comment about Born to Run. Girl, I have read that book twice. It is I cannot put down book. It is one of my all-time favorites. I'm assuming you've read it.
Yeah, it was actually my favorite too. And you know why? Because I'm running myself and I'm also always injured. And at one point I was thinking, how can you run without being injured?
Yeah.
I do believe it's not possible.
Yeah.
But especially if you go for competitions, you know. Well, it's an amazing book about someone who is also loving to run, but is also always injured.
So the book is also, it weaves a great story with science. And anyway, I highly recommend it. Whether you're a runner or not, you'd love it. And I'm sorry, Joe, you go ahead and end the meeting, but I just had to tell Elena, yes, I read the book and I love it. It's one of my favorites.
This actually gave me a moment to remind everybody, Shrikant will be back next Friday, so don't worry about it. But no, thank you everybody for joining us this evening.
It's great having you. It's great having you, Joe.
Well done.
Take care, guys.
Shelley.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye, everybody.